Hello, PAX Online 2020. Wherever you are, we want to thank you for taking an hour out of your day to join us as we talk about imposter syndrome and championing yourself in the games industry. No matter what stage you're at in your journey, we're confident we'll have the tips that will help you squash those thoughts of not feeling good enough for the job. So first, before we get started, I want to kick off introductions by describing what the Timezone Tango is really all about. So we're a group of game devs from across the world who aim to show off the diverse people and experiences found in the games industry. We range from indie to AAA across many different roles, and we like to discuss topics on the industry to help distill some insight for you, our viewers. And so for our live viewers, we're also sitting in your chat right now. So please feel free to ping us at any time in chat for appropriate questions, and we'll get to it as quick as we can. So for future us, reveal yourselves in chat right now. So with that, let's break some ice. So I'm your host, Walter Ferrell. I'm a server engineer at Blizzard Entertainment, and I'm working on an unannounced project. I'm living in LA right now, so I'm in the PST time zone in California. And let's go ahead and get this started. So Bernice, you're up first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and also tell us a little bit about a game you're playing right now that is super geeking you out, and like what is geeking you out about it, like what's really cool about it. So go ahead.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Bernice. I am a UX designer at Pixelberry Studios in Mountain View, California. So I am PST, West Coast, Best Coast. And a UX designer basically focuses on humans, y'all, interact with the product. And honestly, I can go in a lot of detail about that. So if you just have questions, future me will be happy to answer them. A game that is geeking me out right now is A Short Hike. Playing it has reduced my anxiety, and it's a very stress-free environment, and it's a beautiful game. I would highly check it out if you want something safe and relaxing.
Hi, my name is Arah Collins. I'm a cinematic games designer at Supermassive Games in Guildford, England. So my time zone is BST, British Summertime. A cinematic game designer does everything from dealing with branching narrative, especially in our games, to game flow, gameplay, and cinematic sequences. A game I'm really loving at the moment is Senua's Sacrifice. I'm actually really enjoying the combat and their very unique approach to storytelling.
Hi guys, I'm Megan Villablanca. I'm a technical artist at Ubisoft San Francisco, and I'm in PST or Pacific Standard Time, so I'm on the West Coast. For a little bit, for you guys that don't know, a technical artist serves as a bridge between art and programming, and if you guys have any more questions, I can answer in chat. A game that I'm currently playing is actually Fall Guys. I'm not the biggest fan of battle royales, but I actually really love this one because it's so aesthetically pleasing and really cute. And it kind of lessens the blow whenever I'm losing, which I do a lot.
I'm Calliope Ryder. I'm the game runner at a studio in Wellington, New Zealand called Starcolt. So my time zone is New Zealand Standard Time. So I'm from the future, first time zone in the world. I am representing the indie scene here, and I'm also representing the Australian-New Zealand industry. On that note, because indies are often very small, not always, but often, sometimes the roles are a bit strange. So for me, Gamerunner, which is my title, is basically like a creative producer. I can do everything from production, marketing, and sound direction, as well as sometimes doing spare art as a support to our lead artist, Brianna. Favorite game? At the moment, I am playing Divinity 2 Original Sin. I'm really enjoying other people being locked down so that I know that everyone's going to make our campaign together. I'm really loving that social aspect of playing games with an actual big group and it not being once every 3 months. It's really great fun.
Hey, I'm Zhou. I am a researcher at Riot Games, responsible for the gameplay of League of Legends. So research is a pretty rare role. What we do is basically answer any kind of questions you have about players and gameplay, understanding like why players play things or do things, and understand like and making sure like the game has intentional frustrations instead of unintentional frustrations. So I am currently in the PST time zone, but I was in the EST time zone just a few months ago and just recently moved back to LA. A game I am super big fan of right now is Spiritfarer, which I have currently playing a little bit. It's super cute. You get to play around with the cat. I love the time management, and I really enjoy like non-violent power fantasies, and this is one of those games that I like currently. So yeah.
Awesome. So last year, we were here at PAX 2019 in the flesh. We presented a panel on our personal experiences getting our first roles and gave takeaways about where we thought that it's best to focus your time and effort to get a job in games. So now that it's been a year, things have changed, obviously. Things are very different now. How do you all feel about the advice that you had last year? And is there anything you would want to add to tell prospective devs like, hey, here's what you should focus on. Don't sweat the small stuff. Here is the real stuff. Is there anything that comes to mind for y'all?
Yeah, I have one. I think last year there was a lot of talk about a lot of rejection. And it's really nice that rejection can fuel you to succeed and your successes. But I've definitely learned going through the working environment that it's very important to kind of let go of some of that spite and kind of forgiving people and not letting spite turn to bitterness to motivate me. So that is something I've been struggling and still actively try to work on. But doing that makes it a lot healthy mentally and to keep your relationships better too.
So I wasn't at the talk last year, but advice I would give to my newbie self is just because something's out of your comfort zone doesn't mean that you're inadequate. And to stop constantly worrying, and also knowing that asking for help very frequently is part of being a developer. And it's much worse to sit at your desk hoping the answer will just float into your head rather than asking someone, because most often they'll just be able to help you solve it in under 20 seconds, and then you'll wonder what you were fussing over in the first place.
I think there definitely is, when you first start trying to get into the industry, there's like this giant pressure to kind of just be perfect. And I know it's very easy to be self-critical and want to like always put on your best and like not look like you don't know something and not feel like you're the odd man out. But I definitely think like once you get into the industry, like you realize how much of a gap there is between like, say, people who are senior and you coming in. And I think it is very, very important to just ask questions and realize like you are not that standard that you think you have to put yourself at to get in the industry does not necessarily apply once you're in. Like you've gotten in, it's okay to like make mistakes. It's okay to ask questions. People will expect this from you as a junior.
Thinking about what I think last year I talked a lot about networking just because like volunteering and going to events and networking was really vital in me kind of getting FaceTime with people, and then that led me to getting both of the jobs in games that I've had so far. What I would say now though was that with networking, I think in our industry, because a lot of us are really young, there's like a lot of unprofessionalism that comes into social networking and like drinking events and things. And I think that I would advise myself to have better boundaries, and, you know, it's okay to tap out early. It's okay to say goodbye at 10 p.m. and go home. You don't have to be the last one there to make sure that you like meet everyone that you possibly can, especially at events like GDC, which, you know, make you feel like you need to, you know, you've gone all that way, you need to make the maximum amount of effort possible. But I think that kind of thinking fed into some really unhealthy expectations of what I had and of boundaries, particularly my own boundaries, and not letting, you know, like now I would tell myself to stick up for myself a bit more, cut people out who need to be cut out, cut those, you know, make those boundaries really clear and stay safe and comfortable.
I think one that I would want to capitalize on a little bit is the fact that you need to not forget that where you're at right now, especially in a junior and associate position, everyone has been there before, and like it is a daunting thing, and almost everyone will agree that it's a lot with your first role going into the industry, that it's just like a surge of so many things that it's hard to kind of keep track of like where you want your career to go right off the bat when you're still trying to figure out how to be a human. And like for me, it was being away from college and being away from support structures because I flew from the East Coast to the West Coast. So it's like trying to figure that out in the first year and how life works alongside this. And I think it was very easy for me to feel like no one else really knew how that felt. But after you talk to people and you start to get to know people a lot more, you realize that, especially early, like those things are pretty normal. So don't freak out, especially when things start to feel not so great because you had like this ideal of what things were going to be, and things, maybe there was a little bit more rocks along the way, more bumps. So that's just one thing that I want to point out and always remind.
I mean, I still have my anti-CV from last year where I keep a list of all my failures and poke fun of it, and it's still there. And unfortunately, still growing even at work, which makes it easier to like kind of deal with those mistakes as they come up. And it's nice to see that there are less mistakes than 3 years ago. Huge plus. I'm improving by failing less.
Yeah.
Obviously, it seems like there's a lot of things that are different in our lives now versus when we talked last year. So I'm curious if you all have any expectation versus reality moments. Kind of anything where you expected work or life to be a little bit different and things surprisingly, maybe good, maybe bad, kind of came out a different way than what you expected. Are there any of those moments that you all have?
Everything.
Yes.
Yes.
You could say that.
Yeah, I have like, I guess, a naive one, but like when I was in college and like wanting to get into the games industry, I thought like my goal was to go to like the more mainstream famous studios, so like the AAA studios, and just like kind of hop around those studios. Because there's like, as like a college student, there's like some kind of fame or like reputation attached to them, and it's kind of like the Fortune 500s, and you want to kind of make it there. So that was like my goal. And then actually getting into the industry, I realized that it's way more important to like be at a place you like than any kind of dream game studio. Like, I definitely didn't expect to like where I'm at as much as I did now. And like, I'm really happy that I can just be happy and always feel like I'm learning, and that like this is a good place to keep on staying. And I don't think 2018 Bernice would have bought into that. So I think that's my biggest realization.
I think kind of going into that, one of my probably biggest realizations now being in the industry for a little bit is that like you're gonna be a baby. If you're coming in as an associate, you're gonna be a baby, and that's okay. I think for me specifically, it was kind of a shock because my team is all senior, and when I say senior, I mean like more than 20 or 30 years experience type senior. Like they've been in the industry for a while. Like one of the seniors on my team has been a technical artist before the name technical artist was developed for the industry. So that's how long they've been there. So I think it's really, for me, it was definitely an intimidation factor of like, oh God, like, how can I compare? And I think for me, I've always been a very inquisitive person, but I didn't realize how much of a hesitancy there would be for like, I don't want to look stupid. And I definitely think that's one of the things that I had to really overcome, because like as Walter said before, like everybody's always going to be a beginner. Like you're always going to be an associate. People remember what that's like. And so I think it's definitely important to like just like reality check yourself. It's okay. It's okay not to know. And like definitely ask questions. People are nicer than you think. And people often want to share their knowledge. And especially since you're in the game industry, like people generally love what they do, so they want to talk about it.
Yeah. Gosh. So many things have changed. So, for example, this time last year when we were doing this panel, I thought that the game was going to come out in February 2020. It is now August, and our game is coming out next week. Best Friend Forever wishlisted. So basically, like, I had to shift a lot of expectations because our entire world's changed. You know, like New Zealand was one of the first countries to go into a really serious lockdown after only 20 cases. 20 cases and we're in level 4. It was like pretty much isolation for 6 weeks and then varying levels of isolation after that as well. And that affected us productivity wise. We also needed to get a new programmer across, and that was also a really difficult thing during COVID too. And then just the time for things to get checked and to go through platform stakeholders and all that kind of stuff. Everything just took 3 times longer than we'd expected. So that was a really great reality check for me, because I'm a little bit of a control freak. So realizing that actually I can't like there's nothing I can do about a pandemic. Like I can't. There's like absolutely nothing I can do. So realizing that, there are some things that are going to be out of my control, and it doesn't diminish my abilities as a producer if these huge crazy world events mean that the game comes out a few months later than I was expecting. So that's something that I would sort of pat the Aragami on the head and be like, don't worry, it's not going to come out on time, and that's okay. Yeah. People will still enjoy it.
So something I didn't expect from the industry is how valuable people skills are. My first couple of weeks of Supermassive, I was doing so much talking every day to just dozens of different people that I would come home exhausted. And you don't really think about that until it happens. And also how important it is to have your priorities straight, or to know what your priorities are. Right now, I have a blackboard next to my desk where I can actually physically write down what is the most important thing to do first. As often, especially as a designer, where what you can be doing can be so broad, it's really important to have everything written down, and don't forget about something just because you're really, really engaged in a different task right now.
Also, from the perspective of indies, something that's really changed as well is the way that we need to get ourselves out there. So we don't have physical events anymore. So we don't have PAXs or GDCs. So it's really hard to get visibility. It's really hard to get funding. It's really hard to talk to publishers, because a lot of those things are held in person. So I just kind of wanted to, put up a hand to be like, it's really tough for indies out there. I know that for the games industry, as like stuff that's already on the market is obviously doing well with people in lockdown, but this last year since March has been really, really rough for people who have either been trying to get visibility for their game with no PAXs or anything like that, and trying to figure out how to shift over to digital events has also been an interesting time. And then the actual fact that without the meeting face to face, it's really hard to get funding. I just wanted to be the indie voice of like, what about us?
So I have 3. Sorry, but the first one is my idea of timelines for everything of what I can do has been very wrong. Like, not necessarily because I am not good enough to do it, maybe, but this idea, like,
my baby producer ears don't want to hear
that. Yeah, like, hey, this project's probably going to take me a week because I've done this kind of thing before on my own and it's been fine. And then you do it, and like someone actually, hey, can you do this work? And that takes like a day or 2 off your schedule. And then meetings come up like all the time, and sometimes scheduled like a day before at best. Sometimes even in the same day in like the afternoon, you're like, okay. Like just emergent work and the amount of time, it's like what Arah said about talking to people. Like you have to spend a lot of time talking to people just about the kind of work you do and what they're doing to get an understanding, like holistically, of the project you're going to undertake. It just balloons each project like out of proportion, and that's not something I was used to before coming into industry, where I could have like neat little timelines that maybe be off by like a few days or so. This one, now it's like a project's like, oops, I'm only a month late, maybe that's good. The second one is that I really, really love vacations now. I mean, I didn't dislike it before, but it's like definitely a newfound appreciation because I'm doing what I love. I really love research, so I thought like every day would be like great, like it's fine, something I would love to do for like days on end. And now sometimes I want to think like, can I take another Friday off? Because it's nice to have time to myself. Like it's especially in all of this, like when you just need to decompress from being at home for so long and doing everything there. So I really, really enjoy vacations now, and I want more of them.
Hell yes.
Not that I don't get enough.
Vacations.
Yeah. Like, I mean, Riot just gave us a whole week off, and I'm just like, dear God, please, more. Third point is documentation. I didn't think documentation was as important before coming into industry, but it's like each company you go into has like a different way of doing things, and you doing things differently isn't necessarily bad, but it does make things much harder. And if you don't document, it makes it hard for everyone to understand what you're doing, and also like be able to help you in that regards as well. So the flip side is like if other people don't document, you go in you have no idea what anybody's doing, and it just takes you months just to like get up to par to what everyone's doing instead of being able to like hit the ground running.
Yeah, definitely
Mood.
with documentation. Please do it. Please do it. Don't be lazy. Everybody's been there. Everybody's been lazy, but like it's the worst when somebody has left and you have to basically rediscover, you have to reinvent the wheel. Don't do that. Be nice. Write documentation before you leave.
Actually, on documentation, I recently watched a really great GDC quickfire talk about it by Liz English, I believe. So, future me, link it in the chat right now. It's really good.
So we talked a bit about realizing unforeseen obstacles we face in our early career, but now I want to switch the focus a little bit to something that plagues many people in all stages of tenure: imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon where an individual doubts their accomplishments and contributions to the point of being in constant fear of being exposed as a fraud in their organization. Personally, I've felt this many times throughout my career, and I have to actively work to keep those feelings at bay. But I'm curious, have you all ever felt this? Do you have any kind of tips to how to get over it, any strategies to keep those feelings at bay, and how you ultimately found out that, hey, maybe I have imposter syndrome?
So, I never really thought I had imposter syndrome. I thought, no, that'll never happen to me. I don't understand why people say that. Like, I don't get that. Never. But it wasn't really me consciously believing it. It was more of an existential dread of constantly being out of my comfort zone because I just joined the company and I was using tools I wasn't used to and thinking, oh no, like I can't fail too much because then they won't, they'll know I'm not good enough, or I really don't feel confident with any of these tools yet. That must mean I'm not the right fit. But it was all sort of buried deeply. And then I self-reflected on it about 6 to 8 months later when I realized that, I was new to the company. I was a trainee. I was meant to be bad at things. I was not meant to walk into the job, the sun shining out of my ass, so to speak. And they were expecting me to fail. And failing is fine, but what is not fine is thinking I've got to do this by myself and be strong, independent junior designer and never ask for help. That's bad. That's when they start to get concerned, is when you can't communicate or you don't want to.
Yeah, definitely going off that point, questions. And I've said this prior, but questions, ask questions. I know I also had problems of like coming in, and there's definitely a fear of like not wanting to look like a fool, like trying to prove to everyone that like you made the right hire, you like made the right choice, because getting into the industry is so hard and you don't want to feel like you're jeopardizing your place there. For me, I know I had a little bit of trouble, and my lead, who is amazing, kind of came up with a rule for if you can't figure it out in 15 minutes, God damn it, Megan, just ask the question. And I was like, okay, I will. And I think that's definitely helped me, is just especially having people who are senior and or your lead just being able to like kind of encourage you and say like, hey, like it's fine. Like you are free to fail. That's expected of you. I know in my case, it was a little bit of intimidating because I was put in charge of characters for our project. And for me, that was like the first time I was leading something. I didn't know if I was doing things right. I didn't know if I was setting up the pipeline right. And that was very intimidating because I would have people who are more senior, more experienced than me asking me questions, and I'd be like, oh God, I'm not qualified. Like I feel like I'm bullshitting out my ass, giving these people answers. But then it kind of reflected on me that, hey, like even people who are senior are asking questions. Like they're asking for my input. Even if you're senior, even if you've been in the industry for so long, you don't know everything. Everybody is learning new things. Nobody knows everything that's happening in the game. So I think it's really good to be able to reflect and be like, hey, I'm not the only person. Like I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to ask questions. Other people are asking me questions. There are healthy expectations, and I think it's really good to check yourself and also like reflect and ask other people like, hey, am I doing okay? And for the most part, I think usually they will say you're doing fine.
Yeah, I think piggybacking off that, like setting realistic expectations with yourself and your team, I feel like within design, within my profession, I describe it a lot as one job that really encompasses like 5 different jobs. It's not uncommon for people, to expect designers to do art and the animation and the research and like have technical chops to like implement something, and then even tiny bit of aspects of game design. And it's like all of these things are like there could be a dedicated person to do all this, but you like are like the generalist who gets to kind of give professional advice on all of it. So that's hard at times, right? And so a way that I've been trying to deal with that is, as everyone's saying, it's, kind of call your, not really call your limit, but just, setting expectations. I've tried to take classes or do things on my personal time to try to like level up the skills I feel weak at, but also talk to my team about like, hey, like, while I'm not like a master at this, but I think here's my input, and take that for what it's worth. And I think the irony to all this too with imposter syndrome and within our professions is like the more we know about our field, the more we understand how much we don't know, right? Like the more of a master we are at something, the more we're like, oh my God, this thing is way deeper than we expect. So in that way, that's also kind of a good sign. But yeah.
Yeah, I have a complicated relationship with the term imposter syndrome, even because I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but I remember thinking that it was bullshit. Like it just like, no, you don't have imposter syndrome. You just have inadequacies that you're aware of, and and that's kind of that's how it is. Either work on them or you just deal with it. And then I kind of got into games and saw that everyone around me had imposter syndrome, and then I kind of understood why, because like in indie teams, and it's kind of like what Bernice was mentioning as well, you are often expected to be a lot of roles to a lot of different people, and that can definitely exacerbate those feelings of not being good enough. My way of dealing with it, or my way of dealing with my own perceived inadequacies, is basically tackling it head on. So I have a degree in art. I don't have a degree in product management. So I was feeling a bit insecure about my abilities around Scrum and Agile methodologies. So my way of dealing with that was taking a course and deciding to study up and get my PSM, which is your Professional Scrum Master Certificate. And that's helped me a lot, because now I can answer questions that aren't just based on intuition. They are based on the research that I've done and like the courses that I've done. And I know that it's not just from my prior experience. I'm citing things. I can point back to where I've got this information from and the tests or the studies that have been done around that information to prove why I think my points are valid. And that's really helped with my confidence as well in lots of ways. But yeah, that across any discipline. Like I said, I don't just have one discipline at my job. I have to do lots of different things. So I kind of apply that mentality to every area that I feel inadequate in, whilst also giving myself some slack, like everyone has mentioned so far, and understanding that, there's no way you can be an expert at everything. So, just kind of just learn and grow. It's going to take time. We've only been here a year.
I think an important way to kind of give yourself visibility into how well you're actually doing is definitely tracking your accomplishments. Maybe you do something really well, and then the next thing the next project that you accomplish doesn't feel as good. Sometimes it can feel like it's a downward slope in terms of like how well you're doing overall. But I feel like when you start to track your accomplishments, so for me, I keep a journal and I just write about everything that I do and sort of my thoughts around the problems and alternate solutions and things like that. But so I have a little bit of a background knowledge, but I try to pretty much just kind of gauge my own reaction to like, okay, I felt like this went good and this went bad, like XYZ. And but over time, I take the time to look back whenever I've completed a whole notebook and said, okay, hey, I was feeling very bad and low confidence about like doing this certain like engineering task, and now doing that same kind of task now, like I have entirely better feelings about it. So it's nice to see like those small wins that you get, and you usually end up finding that you have tons of small wins and that becomes a big win, and then you can see that you have been progressing over time. And I feel like your lead is probably seeing those kinds of things over time that I usually just wasn't, because I'm just like, well, I have the next task, time to go. So kind of taking a little bit of a hint from that, it really helps to reinforce that your progression is never a straight line. It's always going to be up and down, but you usually will find that your best fit will be the straight line. So just something that I use to kind of combat that.
Yeah, from what it seems like, we've all kind of dealt with imposter syndrome, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like, we're all major parts of whatever organization we work for, and we're making like a major decision for like however big it is that could affect so many players who are like reading the game. And like, I know personally, I've seen my own mess ups on Reddit, so
Yeah.
like
That's
that
so
doesn't
brutal.
feel great. But I mean, from what it seems like, it's like a rite of passage for everyone. Like, you just kind of see part of your mess ups on the internet, and like, it makes you feel bad, but it is what it is. And the way I combat it is doing what Calliope said as well. Like, as a researcher, I love just like looking at papers and then finding out like new avenues of like what people are looking into and discovering from like new forms of research they're trying to do. And also like kind of like helping people out, because like once you start helping people out, you realize that some of the stuff you've internalized in terms of knowledge and just brushed off as like basic information, you realize you've grown past that. You do know more than you think, especially when you have to explain some things to people. And it really helps like solidify like the fact that like, hey, you've made it at least past the beginning stages and you're growing as a person.
I just want to add the point, because I think it might help people, that that you're going to be the person who is most critical of yourself. And so when you feel those feelings, know that what you are perceiving is probably not the reality of the situation. Like, if you're giving a presentation and you're like nervous about, I'm scared like people aren't gonna like think I know what I'm talking about, like by the end of that presentation, what usually happens is that people think you were super confident and what you thought about yourself was not like how the crowd felt at all.
All right, and now for our next section, we are going to do something a little bit more interactive. Well, at least for us. Sorry, viewers at home. But we're going to have the mandatory fun section of flags. We're splitting the categories between red and green flags, and we're going to take a couple topics and do a lightning round. Probably do a couple minutes each, and we'll pretty much, each individual, whenever you have a good red or green flag for the topic, just popcorn, throw up your flag, and talk about it a little bit, and then we'll go from there. So...
I need our Swift.
So we have no budgets. It's like, this is our budget. Everyone show the budget. Everyone show the budget.
This is how much we could
Awesome.
afford.
This is a wallet. This is a library
I
card.
just don't have green objects in my house, in my apartment.
First category, we're going to talk about game studio culture. So this will be anything that has to do with like team culture, or maybe just things going on like in your actual work environment, and maybe a little bit about your work-life balance. So go. Oh, we already have one. Arah, what you got?
Something that I didn't expect that would be a green flag in terms of studio culture is when you're applying for jobs or when you walk into a new job, the atmosphere should feel good emotionally. It should feel pleasant. You should feel at ease. When I walk into my studio, I'm surrounded by very friendly, helpful, professional people. Another thing about studio culture is that most of the people I work with are people with families, people who love baking bread on the weekends, and people who are just paying mortgages, and they're all very pleasant and very lovely. And it's a very diverse group of people in terms of like age and gender and all that, which is, I think, is great.
My green flag was having parents in the studio, so I feel like I covered that one.
All right, Megan.
Hello. So people go home at reasonable hours. They're reasonable work hours, okay? We love to see it. Use them. I once actually got yelled at being a very soft word, about not going home at 6 because everybody goes home early, mainly just because they have kids, but also that and vacations. People take vacations. People love taking vacations. People don't check their work during vacations. You can just expect them to be gone and nobody complains about it. People actively love taking vacations and will also ask you why you haven't taken your vacation.
That's good.
Take your vacations.
All right, Jimmy, I see a red flag. That's red, right?
Cool. Yes, this is red. Yes.
We didn't check for colorblindness.
Ooh, yeah.
The studio has no diversity. That is a bad sign.
That's true. All right, Bernice, you got a green flag?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was gonna add on to Jimmy's too, because like diversity, like in like yes, ethnicity and everything, but also like in different stages of life, which is also the parents, right? But also different life experiences, right? Like juniors versus seniors, and having a healthy kind of proportion of that too. But yes, this is also something people talk about. Games are not like the end all be all. Like people in the studio, like it's okay if you're not super into games, or if you're not having a new favorite game every day, every week, on the hour. And people do non-game stuff.
All right, Calliope, you got a red one?
I've got a red one. It's when one person in the studio is the linchpin. So having one person in the studio where if you pull them out, everything falls apart. So if one person's studio manages like the finances, is HR, is like creative director or game director or whatever terms that you have, and there's no one for them to like bounce off and sort of like argue with about resources or anything, that's usually a bad sign, because then one person arguing with themselves in their heads is not healthy for the person, and it's definitely not healthy for the studio. So yeah, that would be my massive red flag to watch out for. Like, check to see how many balances there are, like how many balancers, not balances, but how many balancers there are. Another quick one while I have the attention of the crowd. Living, breathing games. That. Don't do that. Yeah, go outside. God, it's beautiful if you can. Don't go outside if you're in lockdown.
All right, and then with the last one and the green Swiffer, please, Jimmy, go ahead.
The manager checks in with you regularly.
So great. All right, so on to our next section. So the next one is studio hiring process and practices. So how do we feel about this? Oh, I see a red. Arah?
So this hasn't affected me in my discipline as much, but I know plenty of people who have applied for jobs and then have been asked to do extraordinarily long and extensive tests in order to just go through the first stage of application, and have spent weeks working on, it could be a piece of art, it could be a white box level, anything like that, and then they're told, oh, sorry, you're not the right you're not the right fit for this job. They really should be looking at your existing portfolio rather than making you do all of this extra work for free. If it's a small test, that's fine. But I think a lot of tests can, be days and days and days and days and days of unpaid work, which isn't great.
Can I popcorn off of that? So as somebody who has actually done that, because I didn't know better, don't do that. It's such unpaid labor. If they are asking you for a long technical test and they do not pay you for it, especially if it's a bigger studio, that they should be paying you for a technical test if it is taking that long. If it's a test in person, that's a different kind of scenario because you're testing in person. But like, don't be like that. I once did a technical test that took me almost a week and a half, and I didn't even get any feedback for it. They didn't even answer my request for feedback. They just told me that I didn't have the internship. So don't do that.
Calliope, I think you had a red, but now it's green. So
well, because it's kind of like, it's a bit of both. Yeah, sorry. Because what Arah was saying, and then what I'd like to add on to that is studios that pay for their art tests, because especially like everyone else just said, if the art test is going to be longer than a few hours, it's really good to pay for them. And I know a couple of studios here in Wellington that do, and I think that that's the most ethical way to go about it. Similarly, in this kind of like weird half-half thing, Unpaid internships. Don't do them. Don't do them.
Don't do 'em.
No.
So speaking of Jimmy,
Who would
Jimmy,
ever
you got
do
a
that?
I don't want to
red
hear it,
Jimmy.
That was a long time ago. It wasn't for games. Red flag. I feel this might be a more divisive one, but like I really don't like it when any job ad uses the word gamer.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh yeah.
No, you're
That's
totally
a big
right.
one.
Yeah, like
Screw
if the
that.
job app itself is just like you must be a gamer.
Yeah.
It's just like God.
No.
coding ninja,
Disgusting.
and Rockstar.
That's not your
like,
job.
Yeah, it's always very interesting.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. Like the job description. Like, is it written in a people-friendly manner? Like, are there, is it gender-neutral pronouns being used? And is it like reasonable? Because like I've seen ads where it's like you have to have 10 years of experience in this tool that has only existed for 5 years. So if that doesn't match up, that's probably a red flag.
Damn.
And we have time for one more. So Calliope.
When your interviewer, if you get to this point, congratulations, but when your interviewer doesn't have the right questions to ask you, I think that's like a pretty big red flag, because if you're sort of interviewing for a junior or intermediate role and the person interviewing doesn't understand the language that you're speaking at that level, it generally means that you're signing up for a lot more responsibility than you probably think you are.
Interesting. That's a good one.
That's
Yeah.
a more indie-based one, but yes.
Yeah, you should be interviewed. Your interviewer should interview you for the level of seniority that you're applying for. Like, you shouldn't be interviewed at a senior level for a junior position. Big red flag.
I'm not even talking about that, though. I'm talking about the other way around. So, like, if you're a junior and the person who's interviewing you clearly doesn't understand something about, like, say they don't understand anything about, like, 3D art pipelines, and they're interviewing you as a junior 3D artist, that is a red flag, because it generally means that if they're the person interviewing and they don't have, like, a lead artist there as well or something, they're probably going to be expecting you to do a lot more than you are prepared to do.
Third and final category is community. So this is more along the lines of like socializing and networking, maybe if you are in the industry or getting into the industry. So what are some red and green flags that you all have? And we see some red right off the bat. All right, Arah. Oh, and some green.
So this is me cheating a bit, but a red flag for networking is this is something that actually happened to me, is do not put boobies on your business card.
Oh,
It's not appropriate. Literally happened to me, and also the size of this person's business card, it was
Sorry
the
about
size
that,
of a
that was me.
leaflet. So I had to fold it 3 times to put it in my pocket, which was almost just as bad as the boobies.
Oh, that was the red flag. Okay.
But the green flag I have is there are a lot more... That was the red flag. Sorry, not the green flag. Definitely not the green flag. But yeah, the green flag is there are a lot more networking events these days that are becoming, not alcohol based necessarily. I don't mind those. But at GDC last year, there was, hey, let's go, 2 p.m. in the park and eat some ice cream, or let's go to this nice cafe. Like, those are all great, and I think we should be doing those more. And if you see one, you should go to it, because alcohol based events only aren't great for everyone, and aren't necessarily the best places to do networking, actually.
All right, Megan, you had a red flag?
Yes. Kind of going along the lines of like hangouts, going to some of these kind of spaces where people in the industry are going to be going. Not everything is a networking event. Please remember, sometimes people in the industry just kind of want to hang out with each other. Back when I was still in Chicago, we actually had a rule at our like industry meetups that you do not self-promote and that you do not talk about work. This is just for us to hang out and talk about like bread making or your 3-year-old. So be very self-aware, because it also doesn't make you look good if everybody's just like talking about their favorite sports team or talking about their kids and you come in like dead center with a self-promotion. It's not in your favor. Definitely read the room, be aware, like your time will come, but like also respect that people have lives outside their work and industry.
All right, Jimmy with the red flag?
When people like harshly criticize games. Like sometimes Sometimes we know, and sometimes like we just did not have the A, manpower, B, time, or C, resources to really do anything about it. And when you just like flame developers for something, I think it really shows a lot right there. And that's an instant like no in my eyes. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, not having
Yeah,
any tact.
Yeah, it's like,
not
yeah.
tact. Don't shit talk other developers. It's a small industry.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty small.
It's not a good look. It's like being the mean girl in high school. It's not a good look.
It is like being the mean girl in high school. I kind of, okay, this is kind of the same, so I just have to quickly like throw this one down because I was emceeing an event and the developers, so a couple of developers got on stage and used an example of a game that had just flopped really badly, really publicly to the entire to the entire community of developers who were there listening to the talk, and it went down like a sack of bricks. It was not pretty. No one appreciated it. No one thought it was funny. Like shitting on other devs is just it's just never classy.
Not a hot look.
All right, Bernice, you got a red flag?
Yeah, I guess it's the theme is very similar to what everyone has been saying. But yeah, like treat like if you're gonna like try to network, treat people as people. Like if you're gonna talk to them, don't talk to them as if they're their occupation or they're the company. Talk to them like they're a real human being, and like, you know, put some effort in, like, even if you have to feign it, which hopefully you don't, like being interested, being interested in what they do or how they are, you know, yeah, and have empathy. I think
It sucks
is the
that you have
big
to bring
one,
up the
right?
common sense ones, right? I think that's the sad part. All right, and
Yeah.
then for the last one, Calliope, you got a green one?
Yeah, if community events or like community groups, so like if you have a game developers association in your town, country, state, whatever, it's a good sign if it's run by a group of people rather than one person. Again, with my linchpin, I don't know why I have an obsession with one person being in power and how not okay that is. Democracy. Yeah, I think that for like community events and stuff, when there's more than one person organizing it, you're going to get a group of people who care about everyone's experience, and B, there's going to be much less of a chance for social issues and favoritism and nepotism to become a problem within communities. Yeah,
That's a good one. Well, awesome. And with that, we're running out of time. So I want to thank everybody at home and everyone here from the beautiful Timezone Tango cast for joining us. And I just want to say, if you enjoyed what you saw today, please follow us. We have some links down below for new content, new things we want to talk about. And really, if you just want to come and ask us some questions. So from all of us here, until we see you next time, good morning, good evening, and good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.